Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where we share stories of people conforming to the letter, but not the spirit of a request. And today we have 3 great stories, so subscribe, hit the like button, and let's begin. The first story. Tech battles stubborn customers' demands. Installs satellite dish on ground. TV loses signal, and customer learns a costly lesson. The second story. Employee faces a lack of disability accommodation at Walmart. Resorts to short-term disability insurance for support. The third story. Police motor unit teaches impatient drivers a lesson by enforcing traffic rules and causing delays. Today's first story is: customer demands TV satellite dish be reinstalled on the ground after roof is replaced, then wonders why his TV won't work. This is a story told to me by a coworker at a satellite TV installation company that I used to work for years ago. And I've since quit. Absolutely horrible company that treated its employees like dog sh. To help you understand the dilemma, I'm going to lay out some very basic groundwork here on how satellite TV works, so that you can understand the dilemma that he was faced with. Context. When we installed a satellite dish, we use a special inclinometer to determine whether or not our satellite dish's view will be obstructed. Each region is given a specific azimuth, elevation, and tilt that serves to identify the actual satellite in orbit and to prevent us from installing a non-functioning system. Actual story. With that said, our boss called my coworker to assist with a satellite dish relocation because a customer replaced his roof, and they tore his satellite dish off the old roof when the new roof was put on. My coworker arrives and the customer tells him that he would like the satellite dish to be put on a pole outside. He says, "Fine, where would you like the pole mount to be placed?" The customer points to an area of his heavily wooded backyard and says very sternly, "Put the satellite dish right there beneath the trees, and point it that way toward the sky. I don't want to be able to see the satellite dish. It's pretty ugly." He walks over to the spot, all the while knowing this isn't going to work. Using his inclinometer, had to make it look like he tried, and says, "Sir, this isn't going to work here, or anywhere on the ground for that matter. The satellite we're aiming for is past these trees, and your TV won't get signal. It will need to go back on the roof." Customer, "Well then point it the other way then," angrily shouts the customer. Technician, "Well, it's not going to." Customer, "How's it not going to work? The sky's open, is it not? Do you just not want to work or what? That's a brand new roof." Additionally, I should also mention that Tech drove 1.5 hours for this. The Tech was patient and tried to reason with him, but kept cutting him off before he could explain himself. He would still have 1.5-hour drive back for a total of 3 hours. He was not getting paid by the drive, only by the job, and the boss rearranged his schedule since he was the closest and one of the few techs to have the proper equipment, since the warehouse kept such poor stock of the pole mounts and cement. The company essentially screwed him and wouldn't have coughed up the money if the work did not go through. And so he did exactly as the customer said. He placed the satellite dish exactly how the customer wanted it, pointed at the sky, and right after that the technician left. And the customer was happy. Well, happy right up until he went to turn on his TV and got the error code 771, signal loss on satellite. The tech didn't pick up his phone for the customer when he tried calling, and then eventually the boss called and asked, "Why didn't you put the satellite dish on the roof?" Tech, "I tried to explain it to him. I tried reasoning with him. I told him it wouldn't work where he wanted it, but he absolutely insisted it would because of the clear sky. So I gave him what he wanted. The customer's always right." The boss sympathetically says, "Yeah, but you know that's wrong." In the end, the customer's TV was out for the next 2 weeks, and he absolutely deserved every bit of it. From what my coworker told me, the boss didn't hear the end of it from the customer when the customer called in to complain. But my coworker told me that the boss absolutely deserved it because the boss was giving him SH all week. Edit. I should also mention that we got paid by the job. The company wasn't going to compensate him for the time spent setting up a non-functional satellite dish. And so he overrode the mandatory SAT test that was failing through tech support to close out the work and get paid. Where the customer wanted it took time. Mounting an 8-foot pole 3 feet deep, mixing 50 pounds of instant concrete for pole, waiting for concrete to set, 30 minutes, building the dish, pointing the dish, and running wires. If he took the 2 hours to do all this and the customer canceled because he didn't want it on the roof, he would not be paid at all. There's no easy way to show the customer that an area does or doesn't work, other than explaining the inclinometer, fancy compass for azimuth and elevation to determine SAT position, and pointing to SAT position in orbit. The other way is to install a dish, but the inclinometer is used to stop you from installing a dish in a bad spot. All of this would have been unpaid work, He wasn't going to do all this and then relocate the dish to the roof after the customer found out he was wrong. He forced it closed and got his money. He said it was likely that customer service told him that the pole mount was entirely possible, and that set up unrealistic expectations at the job. Edit 2. When SH like this goes down, we used to be able to apply an hourly rate request and have it approved for SH like this. Needless to say, they stopped approving these requests. We got paid $23 for service calls. Sometimes it was easy as changing the HDMI input. Other times elbow grease was involved, and we had to repeat the dish. In some cases, the techs got put on a job that became a 4-hour rebuild, and only got paid $23 for the full 4 hours. There's a lot of shady SH that they did, including signing up customers without their consent for protection plans so that the boss could win a trip to Vegas. ISH you not, that's a Reddit post all its own. The next story is, have me work throughout the pandemic, promote me, and then don't accommodate my disability? You can pay my short-term disability insurance for that. Let me go a little bit of backstory first. I started working at Walmart before the COVID-19 pandemic happened as a full-time apparel employee. I happen to have grand mal epilepsy that started in my mid-20s, around 2015. I'm also quite understanding of other people's disabilities, and often try to work with them, since I can relate to having issues. Example, I use hand gestures and/or writing for deaf coworkers. This helps with basic communication that most hearing people don't bother with, and it's normally appreciated that I do this. I got to stay in that exact same position throughout 2020 and part of 2021. Naturally, I had to still go to work as an essential employee, deal with anti-masking idiots, and worry about both my parents, who also work in retail. I managed to get myself promoted to the digital shopping department by transferring stores, and pointing out certain key skills I have that are really useful in retail in 2021. I had politely asked for the minimal requirements from my department manager, of 1, being able to take medication at work, and 2, not having to bring orders out to cars because I lack what's known as an aura. Basically summed up here, I can't sense seizures coming. Through, I don't have them very often due to medication. A grand mal plus busy parking lot at work seems a bad idea. My department manager agreed to this condition as long as I did other work to help out the digital team instead, which was completely reasonable to ask for in my opinion. So as per the request, for a lot of closing shifts I'd take up phone duty, pre-set up the orders to go out, and/or do returns for the department. The issue here was the personal department person. She kept forgetting about my condition repeatedly over the next year. This was despite me bringing in medical notes from my neurologist for my file, pointing this out more than once when I shouldn't be scheduled solo, and having the department manager talk to her. After over a year, she scheduled me completely solo for a closing, which I noticed and texted my department lead about. I did the official suggestion of hers, despite my thoughts that corporate Walmart was likely even dumber than her on basic disabilities. I only asked for the exact same things I asked my department manager for, both very, very logical and minimal accommodation requests. As I suspected, Walmart's Sedgwick said, "We can't do this unless you change departments." All departments suggested either wouldn't work due to time and/or location, or they were back at the same level as apparel, which would lower my position and pay. Sedgwick put me on an automatically placed LOA after a few days without my permission. This was to allow me to figure out what I should do over the next 4 months. I called up and asked the Walmart Benefits Center about this. As of late 2019, Walmart signed all their employees up for a free to the employees short-term disability insurance, without officially telling them. I filed to get this insurance to pay for my entire LOA, politely my situation to a total of 3 people, and was given the short-term disability payments, with back pay for exactly when they put me on leave. I'd rather have my paycheck and insurance stick around for a while despite Walmart and Sedgwick being idiotic. I quit Walmart, after having gotten holiday employment with Target for 2 months at that point. Edit. Based off personal experience here, most places, franchises, big box, even some family-owned businesses, mostly care about making money first. Not trying to be cynical, just realistic here. Edit 2. The accommodation was originally informal but through store-level management. This is because 1, the accommodations were very simple ones, and 2, the corporate doesn't choose to understand that ADA doesn't mean move to lower-level department. There's a ton of stories about just Walmart on that one, besides mine. Walmart's corporate overlords are known for having good lawyers to avoid any accommodations they don't have to make. When I tried to corporately done, through the proper channels, this is what happened. The third story is, ignore the red lights and come at your peril. About a decade ago, While I was waiting for my current department to hire, I took a job with a private EMS company as an EMTI on a fast response motorcycle unit, contracted out to our local freeway agency for accident response. It was an okay gig. Long hours and riding 300 plus kilometers every day killed my love of biking, but it beat the hell out of working on an ambulance. The same agency also staffed pickups with safety crews for the purpose of lane closures and scene safety. While we were a quasi-governmental unit, we had no real authority outside of that allowed to us by the Fire Brigade Services Act, and often had motorists ignore our suggestions when it came to not driving through accident scenes. This meant that police units still had to smack pee-pees occasionally, and it was usually quite fun to watch. I had the pleasure of working the same stretch of freeway as a certain Metro Police motor unit, and I had watched him screw with people a few times. Two specific times come to mind. The first time I saw this salty old bugger use his powers of SH housery was after a multi-vehicle pileup, just after an aggressive bend in the freeway that closed down 3 of the 4 lanes of traffic, causing a line of cars that stretched for a few kilometers back around the bend, meaning that cars at the rear couldn't see what was causing the delay up front. A number of drivers decided that they were too important to wait and drove up the hard shoulder, half on the road and half on the grass, to mosey on by the accident scene, leaving the rule-abiding drivers to sit in the hot sun looking at us with dismay. After a few of them snuck by, nearly hitting crews who were busy treating patients and almost taking out a recovery vehicle, this absolute stud of a man got fed up and moved his bike into the shoulder, but in such a way that they weren't able to see him. Every car he stopped got told to park up and wait while he waited for his next victim. After he'd collected a gaggle of about 20 of them, he slowly made his way up the line, ticket book in hand, to have an unhurried chat with each driver individually. Not only did I get to watch each idiot eat an almighty fine for leaving the roadway and ignoring emergency vehicles, they also had the pleasure of sitting there as the scene was cleared before being allowed back into traffic, turning a 20-minute delay into nearly an hour of baking in the noonday sun. There was much gnashing of teeth and mutterings of, "Don't you have anything better to do, officer?" While that was pretty funny to me, the best I saw of him was a few months later, when we got a call for a scrap metal hauler that was quite impressively overloaded, that had managed to roll over while on the 2-lane overpass, connecting the same national freeway to the city freeway, that led into the industrial area south of the city center. This thing must have been pushing 40,000 kilograms when it wedged itself, nose against the right-hand concrete barrier, and tail digging a deep gouge into the counterpart barrier on the left. This meant that there wasn't a bell hair on either side of the truck, and traffic was diverted at the entrance to the overpass, around 500 meters up from the scene. I didn't technically need to be there at this point, as the driver had been taken to hospital, and the road was closed awaiting the arrival of 2 heavy rigs to lift and recover the truck and contents. I was leaning on my Suzuki, perving over this officer's BMW R1200 RT, when we noticed that the crew of the safety unit at the closure was having difficulty with a vehicle that seemed to think they were above the law and were aggressively trying to get by the pickup, cones and angry men in reflective gear. Seeing this and the potential for injury, he told them to wave the car through. As it zoomed down and then up to us on the top of the overpass, he winked at me, and when they stopped behind the very heavy and very wedged truck, he wandered over to have a chat with the driver, who was apparently the spokeswoman for the 4-strong irritation of Karens within. The crux of his chat with her was that he certainly understood their point about needing to get to their highly important destination, but that the road they had elected to use was currently blocked by 40 tons of mangled steel, and he was sure they would agree. It would be dangerous for her to drive back against the traffic, considering that we had heavy rigs and support vehicles arriving and setting up. He apologized for the inconvenience, but directed them to park up by our bikes and wait for the rigs to do their thing, after which we could all be on our merry way. Took about an hour to get the road clear, after which they most definitely weren't making eye contact and appeared like beaten dogs, as he finally wished them safe travels on their way. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to know when the new video comes out, and hit the like button to support the channel.